right. And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is Wednesday, time for our monthly live with Lynne. And this month, I've brought supporter, friend, nonprofit pro extraordinaire, James from Bloomerang. Say hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone. So glad to be here.
James is in conference season like many of us are. And so he's in a beautiful place in Memphis, Tennessee. So welcome him in. Let's see, James, our question this month, really tough question this month is, what is your favorite summer activity? What would you do if you had your druthers in the summertime?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. So I'm going to give two answers. The first just harkens back to my childhood, which is I grew up in Virginia. And when we had the opportunity to go to the beach, we would go either to Virginia Beach or to Nag's Head. So either one of those, I would love to do any day during the summer. That all sounds fantastic. In lieu of that, my second answer would be what we're doing this summer, which is to go on a family vacation. So my wife and two youngest kids are going to go up to Canada. So it's
Ooh,
our first time to spend an extended period of time up there, and we're going to go to Toronto and Montreal and Quebec and Ottawa and see all the sights, see the history, check out the food, all that good stuff. So anytime I get a chance to spend 10 days or so with the kids, that's always really nice. So I'll give
nice.
you those two answers.
I love it. Montreal is one of my favorite cities. I had so much fun there. Amazing food.
Oh, good.
Great. They have like one of the coolest libraries I've ever seen, like just great
Oh,
art
wow.
museums. Yeah.
Okay.
And they also host like a comedy festival, which is really fun. So maybe you can catch part of that. One of my
Yeah.
favorite summer traditions is to spend July 4th in a different country, and
Nice.
see, because they're not celebrating Independence Day and not
Right.
everybody's on holiday there. So I did that one year and spent the week in Montreal, and it was great. So if you all have a favorite summer activity, let us know. We are headed in that direction. Spring has sprung for most of us. It's heavy conference season right now. I just
Mhm.
got done with AFP International at our own conference in Vegas. Let's see, episode number 4 of Fundraising is Funny, of which James and his team at Bloomerang are huge supporters of.
Yep.
They're one of our biggest sponsors. Episode 4 dropped this week, and it's the episode where the donor eats potpourri. So, my goodness, did we have lots of laughs. So, Cassie loves to hike. And then if it's too hot for hiking, she likes to chill with a book and her feet in the pool, which is lovely, lovely. Um, but yeah, we're just talking about spring into summer, and everybody's thinking about, some people are thinking about closing out their fiscal year fundraising.
Yep.
One of the things that stood out to me at AFP was what's working in fundraising, and it's almost everything from direct mail to
Mhm.
um, text to online donations to emails. Everything's working, but yet we listen to the report from the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, and we're losing donors. So a lot of us are
Yep.
losing donors and donor retention, which is something that I know both Bloomerang and James and the team there really care about.
Very much.
Um, and do you want to tell people about that? You guys actually have a retention meter in your
We do.
software, right?
We do. Yeah. So all of our users, anytime they log in, they can see what their current donor retention number is. It's right there on the dashboard, and it gets updated every day. So it's a rolling number. We look at the previous 365 days and compare it to the 365 days before that, and come up with that number so that you don't have to run complex reports and dig through all the data and all of that. We try to make it as easy as possible for you. And we do that because we heard from a lot of people, first of all, that it's hard to get that information out of a lot of systems. And We've even had questions. I'm going to go talk tomorrow at the Mid-South Conference in Memphis about why donor retention is so important. And I've had a number of people over the years come up and say, well, why is retention so important? Why are you all at Bloomerang obsessed with donor retention? And my first response is, I think I like passionate, maybe better than obsessed, but I get your point. And we like to talk a lot about how expensive it is to get a brand new donor versus how inexpensive it is to retain those donors, and really you got to keep getting those brand new donors in the door, right? But spare a thought or two for the people who have already said, we like you, we want to support you, we want to get behind your mission, and show them some love, make sure that they know that they're appreciated, and try to keep them coming back for more because it's cheaper and they already like you. So yeah, sorry for the long answer, but that's
No.
definitely one of our one of our pet topics for sure.
Yeah, I think it's important to be passionate about the right metrics when it comes to fundraising. There's so many metrics that we can be, that can be involved in our profession. And everybody talks about how much money they raise. And I'm always like, but how many people did you keep year to year? And
Yeah.
is that fundraising successful? And I think that a lot of the times, you don't want to be a flash in the pan. You don't want to just be there and then not be there 2 years later.
Yep.
And how we care for the people that choose to be generous to our organizations and what we do to retain them is really important. It's falling, and we know it's falling.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is you and I were previously talking about, you were going to go up to Canada for part of the summer with your family and travel. Did you know that in Europe, they have much higher donor retention than they do in the US and Canada? And so some of us are going to plug in and figure out what's going on there. I think one of the
Good.
big factors is they tend to give and be asked in a recurring way,
Mm-hmm.
through bank accounts. They,
Right.
they don't do a lot of credit card giving. They actually give through their bank account and do that recurring. But what are some of the things we can do to help with donor retention? What are some like quick wins that we could do?
So I think there's a couple of things that stand out. First of all, Lynn, what you just said is really, really smart, right? So think about framing a lot of your asks in terms of monthly giving instead of just the one-time gift.
Mhm,
So even if someone can afford $1,000 right now today, it's better for you long term if they donate $100 a month.
mhm,
I have a degree in English and a degree in art history, so I'm not great with math, but I think that adds up to more than $1,000 just right off the bat after the first year. But beyond that, you're getting that guaranteed income coming in every single month, which is fantastic. So think about maybe reframing some of those discussions around that, especially at events. So I see a lot of events where there's a paddle raise or there's some sort of signage or something that says for $25 you'll accomplish this, and for $50 this is what you can do. And all that's awesome, don't change that, that's amazing, because donors, we want to know, well, if I give you $100, what's going to happen with that? What do I accomplish by giving that to you? So definitely tell that story, but maybe instead of just a one-time $100 gift tonight, $25 gift tonight, whatever that is, maybe it's an ongoing gift. Maybe
mhm,
it's something that we could get them to plug into and be a bigger part of the organization moving forward.
mhm.
And then the other thing that I'll throw out is phone calls. For your first time donors, Lynn, as I'm sure you know, the retention rate is much, much worse for first time donors, 18% or something like that.
Okay.
So 1 out of 5 first time donors is coming back. That means we're spending massive amounts of time, energy, money holding these events a lot of times to get donors in the door. We're getting them excited. They're getting plugged in. They're going, yeah, this is really cool. I want to be a part of this. Yes, I'll donate. Yes, here's my credit card or checkbook or whatever. And then what? What happens after that? Because 4 out of 5 of them are saying, nope, I'm not going to donate again. So either they're not getting asked, they're not being followed up with, they're not being educated, whatever it is, they're not feeling connected, and so they're letting that they're becoming a lapsed donor. So reach out to them after that first gift with a phone call. And I know everybody's busy, and I know you're thinking, I can't do that. I don't have enough time for that. Bloomerang did a study a year or so ago, and we looked at, well, what happens if you make phone calls to people? Is it good? Is it bad? Is there any difference at all? And we found three key metrics that really kind of drove the point home that yes, you should make phone calls. The first is that the likelihood that they would become a retained donor went up almost double if you called
Okay.
them. So, right off the bat, the likelihood that they'll come back a lot higher. The speed to the second gift went from about 3/4 of a year to about half a year. So you get the second gift faster if you make a phone call. And the size of the second gift went up from about $60 to about 100, something
Wow.
along those lines. So three really good reasons to make the time. Get your board involved. Get other staff members involved. It doesn't need to be all on your shoulders. I know that development people wear a ton of hats and have a lot to do. So pull some help in from other people. Those can be phone calls that board members will actually enjoy. They may need to be convinced, they may need to be dragged kicking and screaming into it, but once they do it a couple of times, they'll kind of go, oh, that was really nice. I got the chance to almost see this organization that I've been involved with so closely for so long from a fresh set of eyes. I got a chance to see why someone donated for the first time, and that was really cool. I really liked that a lot. So, again, you might have to do some convincing, but once you do, they'll normally anyway, they'll enjoy it and they'll want to keep doing it.
I love convincing board members that they don't have to ask for money, that they should have to thank, and when I show them how easy it is to thank another donor, they really do get involved in that work. But I think they're like, "Well, I don't know the person. How am I supposed to thank them?" I'm like, "Well, you both have something in common. You both care about this
Exactly.
organization." And then they're like, "Oh, okay, then I think I can do it." And they gain confidence. I think they also learn about their donor base and how it's changing, and really how, the world is different than
Yeah.
it used to be in terms of donations. So I think, phone calls, reaching out in any way possible is really important, and having volunteers and board members do it sometimes is even more meaningful than a paid staff member can be and would be. What are you seeing, and how is Bloomerang helping folks tackle diversity, equity, and inclusion in fundraising, and wrapping our arms around a more diverse community when it comes to fundraising? How can our tech partners, the folks that are immersed in the work with us, how can they help us do this?
What a great question. So first I would say ask them about it. So push us on it constantly. Most software systems have some sort of feedback mechanism. Maybe it's a forum, maybe it's a form. You can send an email somewhere, get in touch with the executive leadership, whatever sort of mode that they have for you to communicate that. Please do that and do that often.
Mhm.
Talk to your software providers about how important that is, that you want those voices represented more, and you want to know that that's also important to the software provider. Because to be really honest, I think Bloomerang does a good job with that now. There was a time when we didn't do as well, and we had it pointed out to us, and we kind of said, "Oh, right, you're 100% right. We need to do better with this. Let's get on the ball and stop ignoring those voices." And we did well with that. But if you all aren't there reminding us of that, then it can be something that slips through the cracks sometimes. So please on that, all of us. I think one of the things will happen then is right. So Bloomerang weekly webinars that are fantastic on all kinds of different topics. We bring in consultants that are really well known across the industry and other industry leaders to lead those webinars. And so look at that sort of thing. Look at white papers that are produced. Are they, are these companies, leading any sort of research, charging, or anything like that? Look at all of that together and see, are those DEI initiatives included in there? Or is it just kind of a verbal, yeah, that's important to us, we're totally going to look at that, and see if you can kind of figure all that out. Again, there's a long way for us to go at Bloomerang, but that is something that we've started to do really well. We're pulling in some exciting voices to take a look at both some internal processes, but also some partnerships that we're going to be developing here. I don't think I'm allowed to talk about them yet, but they're close to being announced, hopefully within the next few months, that are being led by some really important voices in that arena. So I hate to be vague like that, but we are. That is something that we're trying to do. That is, again, it was brought to our attention internally. There were some internal voices that said, "Hey, I don't think we're doing enough with this," and we looked around and said, "You know what? You're right. We're not." And so we've started to do a lot more with that. So I would challenge your audience, please bring that to your software vendor's attention and do it a lot. Let them know how critical it is, because without that, honestly, we're for profit, and that's one of the things that our stakeholders hold us to is profitability and all of that. So we can't get too narrowly focused on that. So we need some of those outside voices sometimes to remind us of that. That's a really great call out, Lynn.
Yeah, I think that, having just been around a ton of providers and asking those questions as I go booth to booth, and it's more than just a statement. It's, what are you doing to help support our community? Because all of us are in different places on the journey when it comes to equity and inclusion. And it's okay to not be in the perfect place on the journey. There is no perfect place. It's a long, winding road. But I think as we lock arms together and help change things like greetings and salutations, and helping get naming right, and accents, like, do you have accent symbols in the database so that if someone has a TLD on their name, I can make sure it's right on their name badge or on their email. And there are small steps we can take, thinking also about accessibility and being able to see the software, and have readers involved. And so it's important that we think about those access points for everyone as we diversify not only our staff but our donor base, and just really commit to this work. We do such good work in nonprofit world, but we have some spots where we're not seeing clearly. And so I look at it as a partnership. Our vendor partners don't know unless we bring it to them. Sometimes they have different focus, and so I do see it much more so as a walk alongside someone process, rather than a you should be doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So Erica writes a question about stewardship. She said they have great stewardship for people for scholarships and professorships, but when it comes to things like lectureship funds or awards or fellowships, something that doesn't fall out into the norm at or the big funds, they don't often get an opportunity to interact or to have as robust of stewardship, because they don't have just one person they're supporting. Or so, Erica, I really think it's about how do you storytell, and how you're at Emory, so you have lots of wonderful stories at Emory, but how do you storytell in a broad way that then can maybe be funneled down to the donors that don't give to what I would call the traditional areas at your institution? And a lot of those donors are emerging and new, so donors who are supporting new seed funds, or I think that you're right there close to the CDC and you have a medical school, you have a whole new set of donors that gave to COVID and research on vaccines and things like that. So, James, maybe one of the ways you can help us is, how does Bloomerang tell stories, and what is the importance of storytelling in our work?
So I think storytelling is absolutely critical. And the reason is because it can generate empathy and drive emotions if you do it properly, right? So the comparison that I like to make is I'm going to brag about my daughter here for a second. I apologize in advance.
Love it.
My Our oldest is a huge reader. Reads more books than seems humanly possible sometimes. And so much so, and here's the braggy part, sorry in advance, that she is an Instagram influencer for books, which, as her dad, I think is the coolest thing ever. I can't imagine anything better than that. Publishers actually send her books and say, review them for us when you get a chance. And I think that's amazing.
I would have loved that, to be sent free books like as a kid.
Right?
Oh.
Right?
All I got was the individual pan pizzas from the Book It program, but
Hey, my wife, who is a reading coach, will tell you that is a great program that got a lot of kids to read a lot of books.
heck
So
yeah.
props to Pizza Hut for that one. Sorry,
Right?
I'm not a sponsor.
Yeah, right. No
Um,
comment. So tell us about the stories and how that
yeah.
relates to storytelling too.
So Larissa, my daughter, and I talk about this a lot because we both do read quite a bit. I do not read as much as she does, but I read a lot of books, and we talk a lot about we use Goodreads and some of the other scoring systems out there, and we leave however many stars, and we rate the same books sometimes, and we talk about them and say, oh, I really like this one, I think you would like it, and so on. And one of the themes that comes up a lot is character development.
Mm.
So in every story, not every story, in 99% of stories, there's some sort of conflict, right? There's some sort of goal or journey or something where the characters have to get from where they are now to where they need to be, whatever that looks like, whatever's going on. And the really good storytellers are able to incorporate some sort of character development, some way to make you, the audience, care about the characters as well as the journey that they're going on. So I think about Habitat for Humanity, for instance. So it's wonderful, wonderful to say, okay, this family here, the Jones family, is going to be able to own their first house that they've ever had. It's a 3-bedroom house, and here, they've got the kids and all of that. That's wonderful. And then to talk about the steps that family took in conjunction with Habitat, who was there to help them with it every step of the way. It's an amazing story to tell. Take a minute or two and go a little bit deeper and tell me about the characters. Tell me about the Jones family. Tell me about the kids. Obviously, there are privacy concerns and all of that, so be careful with that and work through all of those details. But if you are able to, talk about the struggles that they faced and what this outcome is going to mean to them when they get it. How were their lives changed because they got this house? Go into a little bit of detail about the characters, about the family, about the people that you all are serving, but make sure that you keep the lens of how your organization is helping that family, because the donors are an extension of that organization. And the donors, when they're being told that story, want to feel that connection with the family. And then the line that is drawn is, oh, that's so cool. When I donated $100 last month, I just helped the Jones family. And they may not think through all of that consciously in their head, but believe me, it's there. They'll feel really, really good. They'll feel really connected to the organization, and they're going to want to go a little bit deeper and maybe keep giving and coming back year over year, which helps with the retention problem that we were just talking about.
Yeah, so two things that stood out to me from you talking about that. Number one is the generate empathy and drive emotion. I will always get on my soapbox and say fundraising is 90% emotional, 10% rational. And if you
Yep.
can move someone to emotion, then you have the wallet is easy. And then the second thing was, I love how you talked about the Jones family. I think we have a ways to go in our world about, you said, the Jones family and the steps they took to help get the home with Habitat, meaning they weren't just wandering around one day and a house popped up out of nowhere and it was given to them out of some sort of grandiose act of charity. They were a part of it. And if you know anything about Habitat, the homeowners put in hours of sweat equity. And so that ethical storytelling, where we're not being exploitative of their story, where we
Yes.
dig deeper, that maybe One of the parents has medical reasons for why they can't work full time, but it's not exploitative. It is partner. It is the Jones family and Habitat for Humanity are working together on this home, not Habitat's coming along and is the savior of this Jones family.
That's so well put. I think we see sometimes that magic fairy syndrome of, I'm going to wave my Harry Potter wand and poof, you get a house. And if you stop and think about it for a second, that doesn't generate the same empathy and the same connection with your donors as everything that you just described, Lynn. So that journey that they're going on, all of a sudden, Habitat becomes a partner, like you said, not just a wizard or something. And the donors then are going to feel like they also are partnering, not just bequeathing some gift to someone. Instead, you're all in this together, and we're all on the same team, pulling the same boat, whatever metaphor you want to use there. You're all on the same team is a good one, and it will really cement the connection that has already kind of tenuously been made for those first time donors. But they'll hear those stories, they'll make that connection, and they'll think, you know what, this is really good. This is an organization that understands the value of those partnerships and the value of working with people, and I want to keep supporting that kind of organization.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more, and I also think it gives the beneficiary of the support that dignity that so many people want and need.
Yes,
They're not helpless
you deserve.
victims. They deserve the dignity in their storytelling. They deserve for us to look at them as individuals. A lot of the times in the university world, we have students who receive scholarships, and we put these donors on these pedestals, and I'm like, but the student got themselves into the university first.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that higher
Yep.
education is extremely expensive, and they can't afford,
Yes.
the cost of tuition, room, and board. They're not helpless creatures that the donor came along and was like, "Oh, let me pick you up." And so it's not. It's a student and the donor and the institution make a team.
Yep.
I think that's an important thing to emphasize as we think about equitable and ethical storytelling. Um,
Exactly. Yep, that's
so
exactly right. I think you make a really great point that we need to remember the dignity that that everyone deserves. And if we are doing anything to put their story in a light where they were helpless and some angel came and helped them out of their horrible situation, then we're telling that story wrong.
yeah.
That's not how that story goes. It's not how any story goes in the real world. And we need to remember that and ground ourselves in that.
Yeah, that's really great. All right, so I'm going to ask the buzz question that's happening now. You're in the tech sector, you're in tech for nonprofit, and everybody's buzzing about what does AI mean for our industry? What does Chat GPT and other, I heard last, all this weekend and this week, oh, well, it's going to write acknowledgement letters and replace people who thank donors, and it's going to write, and I'm like, well, wait. We're in a relationship business. I'm big on tech, but what are you hearing, and what are the folks that work in the tech industry thinking about this whole idea of AI and nonprofit work?
So it's really hard, right? Because we're all incredible nerds. I mean, unbelievable nerds. And so the idea of AI automating some things makes all of us go, oh,
Yeah.
yes, tell me more. What would that look like? And then you start to think through what that means and how that could impact, like you said, the personalization, the customization. Really, how does that impact the relationship that we have with the donors? And most of us start to get a little bit squeamish at that point and think, "Ooh, maybe one day, sure, I don't know what the future holds. I couldn't possibly predict that, but right now, let's slow down just a little bit. Let's be really careful with this." You referenced a little while ago the numbers that FEP put out over the weekend, and there was a bunch that drew my eye and kind of made me sit up. But the one that I really didn't like was the drop in overall dollars, and that tells me our donor pool may be shrinking. And if the donor pool is shrinking, and there are a lot of theories as to why that is, but if it is, then we need to make sure that we're holding on to what we have. And so in that case, we need to be really careful with automation. Automation can be wonderful. Um, it can also, if we're not really careful, there's two things that stand out to me. First of all, it can make mistakes because it's a machine, and it can
Right.
contact someone who has said don't contact me, or it's contacting someone who, through email, who wants to be contacted via phone call or whatever. There are all kinds of things because it's a machine and it doesn't know any better. So we need to, if we're going to go down that route of automation, I think we need to be really careful that we have a lot of oversight and that we have a lot of checks and balances in place. There are a lot of those, there are so many stories I can tell you of buying something and then still getting emails from the company that, hey, would you like to buy this? Hey, this is still, oh, it's on sale now. Even one company I won't shame, but I bought something, and then a week later or whatever it was, they sent me an email. Hey, we're willing to cut the price. So it's, you looked at it a week ago and it's cheaper now. And I went, well, hey, I just bought that. So can you give me my $30 difference back now? Or, I
Mhm.
mean, that's not great. So need to be really careful with that. And the other thing we need to be really careful with is how we oversee all of this. So we want to make sure that the perspectives are right. We want to make sure that we're approaching people the way that they want to be approached, and we want to make sure that the relationship with the donor is paramount above anything else. So that involves listening to what your donors say, listening to what they tell you, and make sure that you factor that in somehow. So
Mhm.
I guess I, I there are areas in which AI thrills me in this arena.
Okay.
So, talking with some of the online donation form creators out there, and they're talking about AI as adjusting the ask amount on their form based on the zip code where someone is accessed. Oh, yes, that's amazing.
Right.
And there are plenty of examples like that that I think are fantastic. But when it comes, like you said, Lynn, when it comes to acknowledgments and thanking people, uh, yes, but be careful.
Yeah.
Just go in very carefully with your eyes wide open.
Yeah. One of our listeners, Diana, says she's at an animal shelter and she's been using it to get over writer's block. So to
Mm,
start with not a blank page, and I think that's probably a very interesting way in.
sure.
There are many of us who are easier editors than we are
Oh,
creators and
absolutely.
from scratch, right? It always helps. That's one way. Again, I think the other thing is to make sure it's the authentic voice of your organization, that it sounds,
Yes.
just like Siri and all these others, they get better the more you use them, but also there's that danger of overusing it and losing your voice.
Hmm.
So make sure that you keep authentic, that you are, staying true to how you want to sound and be represented. And also, again, there's nothing better than the human touch in terms of things that an AI is never going to know
Right.
um, about your donors, and that's what sets you apart. Um, I am a nerd as well, and I love the idea of thinking we have very few resources in the nonprofit world, and this could help us work a little smarter, a little more agile when it comes
Yep.
to things like donation forms and things like that. Um, but I don't want it to replace the case for we need to fund our infrastructure properly and fund our staff properly. And there is I heard some folks this week at AFPICon going, well, I won't have to hire a staff member. I'll just
Mm.
have an intern use Chat GPT. And I'm like, oh,
No.
no. Like
No.
that is where it scares me. It's kind of like
Yeah.
when social media started, they put the youngest person in the office on it with no training and no skill set, and they were
Right.
wondering why they didn't have millions of dollars coming in the door from it.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I think your point about maintaining your voice is really important. I know that you can feed lots of information into ChatGPT, and it's supposed to synthesize everything and all of that. I love the idea of starting with that, but then going in and, oh, you know what, I don't think we would ever say that way, so we're going to change that a little bit. Just go in with that eye, and use it as a starting point. I love that idea. As someone who's written more papers than I can think of, than I can remember when I was in college, I would have loved something like that just to get me started. So
Right.
that's great.
Yeah. And there are some. Rhonda's saying she uses Fundwriter. The one I love is Nonprofit Operating System,
Mm-hmm.
because they're designed for nonprofit. The thing I like about Nonprofit Operating System, it bills itself as, this is a draft. This is only a draft. This is
Yep.
not your end finished polished communication. You know what I mean? Like, this is a draft. So,
The starting
there's
point is
right,
perfect.
a starting point. And so definitely not, this is the end all be all. So, which makes me wonder, James, what are the tech areas that nonprofits aren't embracing yet, where we have huge opportunities? For me, the prime example is video. If
Mm-hmm.
I could tell nonprofits to invest in video, and I do, it's just they're like, well, what if it's not perfect? And I'm like, video is consuming
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
and our nonprofits might produce one or two a year,
Mm-hmm.
whereas content creators are doing two a day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Where are the other spaces where we might have opportunities, to communicate, to fundraise, to just, what tech are we not leaning heavily enough into?
Well, video is a great one, for sure. I think if you just think of the number of hours that we as a society spend on YouTube, it boggles the mind, right?
Right.
And I one of the things I would tell your audience is it doesn't have to be a half-hour long video. It shouldn't be a half-hour long video. I mean, think about the last clip you watched of YouTube. What is it, like 2 minutes,
Mhm.
30 seconds? I
30
mean,
seconds.
exactly. We're looking for funny clips from The Office, or we're looking for the latest SNL skit or whatever. So if you're giving a dissertation on a video, I'm not going to watch a lot of that. I might watch the beginning, but that's about it. So keep it quick, and that hopefully alleviates some of the pressure that you're feeling. That it doesn't have to be a huge, big production. I mean, I am sitting in a hotel room in Memphis. My backdrop is not exactly, video worthy or whatever today. But that's the way it goes sometimes. You make the best of what you have. The message is more important than, the aesthetics or whatever. Um, One of the things that we discuss a lot at Bloomerang is, as you and I have kind of alluded to, if the donor pool is shrinking, again, a lot of different reasons why that might be, but one of the prevailing theories is that baby boomers might be aging out a little bit. So if that's the case, then what can we do to reach out to Gen Xers, millennials, and even Gen Z? What can we do to connect with them a little more effectively? Video is a great example of something that would work. How many of you on your online donation forms accept Venmo? I just gave 100 donations to 50 habitats and 50 boys and girls clubs across the country a couple of months ago, and I think I saw two, maybe three, I don't know, that accepted Venmo, Google Wallet, Apple Pay, anything like that. It's not very widespread yet, and it should be. So I have a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old, and I think it was a 22-year-old called me a couple of months ago and said, "Dad, I want to give a donation to this organization, but they only accept credit card." And I laughed for a minute, because I was like, "Wow, are you young? Oh no, you're 22 and you are
Mhm.
able to give donations. So why are we not meeting you where you are?
Yes.
Make it available for whatever they want to do." So Venmo would work. Faith has a Venmo account. She hits me up for taco money all the time. So let's do that. Exactly. Um, and meet them where they are, make it as accessible as possible for them. And if you have a credit card processor, put a little note on the page somewhere for the kids that, yes, debit cards would work, because she
Mhm.
didn't know. She had no idea, because she doesn't use her debit card for anything other than pulling out cash very occasionally.
Right.
But meet them where they are. And then that brings up the last thing. Let me get my phone here. Use texts.
Yeah.
So text to give, thanking by text, letting people know what's going on with events, all of that can be communicated via email for people like me who are older and who actually read those. But for the younger crowd, yeah, let's talk about how we can reach them using the way that they communicate, and that's going to be a text. So figure out how you can incorporate that into your CRM or whatever you're using, and figure out how to make that work, because that will be, those are some tech pieces that I think we're not doing enough with right now.
I totally agree. In text as a channel, we have
Yes.
overlooked text as a channel completely. I think people still look at a phone number and think it's their home phone, and I'm like, it's not somebody's home phone. Go ahead and try it as text, and it'll tell you if it's a landline.
Oh,
You know what
sure.
I mean, right?
Sure.
But I think people think it's intrusive, and I'm like, we have your home address. There is nothing more intrusive
Yeah.
than your home address. Like, we
Yeah.
know we can look on Zillow, I can look on Google Earth and see you waving out your window,
Yep.
but text is intrusive. And so I think, again, it's a mindset of also not employing a diverse crowd of people so that
Right.
we learn these new things, to your point about your daughter. When I met Max and the team at Give Butter, he was like, we're the only place that accepts Venmo. This was a few years ago, that accepts Venmo online. And I was like, wait, you take Venmo and you're an online giving form here? And I brought him over to a bunch of organizations who I knew had a younger donor base,
Yep.
and there is success, right? And
Yep.
so it's also, if we think about socioeconomics, people might have Venmo, they may have Apple Pay, they may have a Google Wallet, but they may not have a major credit card. They may not want to get into the
Yep.
especially American industrial credit card debt complex,
And
right?
good for them if they don't. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I think that it goes beyond age. It goes to inclusivity, it goes to
Yes.
comfort level, it goes to the idea that in modern society, I can buy something with 2 clicks on
Hmm.
my phone, but to give to a charity, it's like a 40-minute enterprise. I gotta go to a laptop, and I need my mom's credit card basically to do anything.
Exactly.
And so we've got to make it an easy process to give, and text and mobile donate is one of the ways we can do that.
So, two things. First of all, my never ending plea to every nonprofit everywhere, all the time, is go give yourself an online donation right now. If you haven't done it in a while, go do it immediately and look at it through the eyes of a brand new donor and a younger donor and see, like you said, Lynn, is there a shopping cart involved? Because if there is, the younger donor is going to be like, what?
What am I shopping
What?
for?
Yeah, exactly. They're not, they're just, nope, they're out. They're done. So go give yourself a donation, see what that process looks like, and see if there are places that you can improve that process. The second, as far as your point about text not being too intrusive, is a really good point. So at the not to make this political in any way, shape, or form, but my wife and I volunteered for the Elizabeth Warren campaign a couple of years ago, and I was stunned and thrilled at how they wove in through different levels all this stuff. So we would go out and knock on doors for the primary to try to get people to get out and vote. And when we got, so, we would go back to the headquarters or whatever and say, okay, we knocked on X number of doors and here are the conversations we had and all of that. And before we got home, both of us had text messages from the campaign at thanking us and asking for a donation.
Mhm.
And we gave, I don't want to say how much or how often, but it was a lot, because in that moment, after having those conversations with people and after feeling really well engaged, we were real receptive
You
to
were
support.
riled up. Yeah, you were
Very,
emotional. Yes.
very much. It was the perfect time. Not at no time did we get one of those texts and go, "What is this garbage? Get this out of here." It was, "Oh, hey, look at that. She knows that we were involved, that we were engaged, that we were passionate. She's asking for more help. Let's do it." Click, and we
Right.
started the process.
And I
It's
think
not
that there's
intrusive.
this stigma against the political fundraising world, that we at nonprofit fundraising think, oh, well, we're better in our missions. But they've figured some things out. They've figured out micro donations and recurring donations. They've figured out
Yes.
tech communications that don't ask as well, where they're just conversing with you and asking if you care about certain issues. And so it
Yes.
always, also, I think if you're going to use text as a channel, the only time I receive a text from you can't be on Giving Tuesday.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
It has to have a conversation with it, right?
Yeah.
And I think, Rhonda's saying, I'm bringing on a new junior board, younger, different
Mm.
kind of group. How do I engage them? Rhonda, video is number one. I think they need to engage each other. If you're going to bring on a group of peers, there's peer-to-peer communication, not just organizational to them communication. So one of the things that I've found successful is putting them up on a software and allowing them to have conversations, whether it's something as simple as a WhatsApp group or a text group, but it could be a platform like a Basecamp. It could be a Slack channel, whatever they
Mhm.
use. And so I would
Yep.
go out to them and say, what are the softwares you're using in your daily life that you either A, don't want to add anything to, or B, really enjoy? And where we can communicate and we can build camaraderie. Like you have a channel for pet photos, a channel for talking about kids and family. But they need to get to know each other outside of the charity, the charity, the charity, the charity.
Yes. Yeah, we at Bloomerang have Slack, and we have lots of different channels for people who have young kids, people who have pets, people who have older kids, people who like to travel, whatever. And we jump in and out of those channels as often as we want to. And that way we get a chance to interact with each other. I remember when I started with Bloomerang, there were 25, 30 of us or something, and there's 300 now.
Yeah.
So there's too many to know people that well. So use those tools that you have available to create opportunities to get to know each other, and it'll happen for sure.
And you'll know your people. I think one of the things that technology has allowed us to do is more personalization in our communications, but
Mhm.
one level of personalization is no longer good enough. So my first name should be a given, right? Personalizing based on first name.
Yep.
If it's not personalized, I'm not opening it. But there should be multiple levels of personalization. And so having people in different groups self-identified of what they care about. So Diana said, I
Oh,
text photos of
yes.
dogs regularly to one of our supporters. And Cassie said, that would make my day. So now you've got two dog people. Great. Right.
Mhm.
So how do you then add other animal people or other dog people into the conversation? Because it's not just they care about your organization, it's they care about your organization and they love animals. Right.
Yep.
So now you've got a second level. But you need to ask people what they use that they enjoy, because there are some people who, like James, may use Slack for work and doesn't want to put his volunteer life and doesn't want to be triggered by a Slack notification thinking, here comes work again. But see,
Yep.
they've incorporated at Bloomerang work and life into their Slack, not just
Mhm.
it's all work and no play. And I think that's really important as well, to have these social channels where we don't talk about the subject at hand all day.
Yes.
Um,
Yep. Give
and
people a chance to talk about where they just went on vacation, or your question up top. What would you like to do if you could do anything this summer?
right,
Give them a chance to get to know each other a little bit. Yeah,
that builds community, and it
it does.
really does form bonds. So Matt asked a question about, he said, any thoughts about using text when engaging patients for the first time? So it sounds like he's in healthcare and
Hmm.
he's thinking about how would we approach a grateful patient or someone who's experienced their services via text.
Yeah, so you be careful with privacy concerns and all of that,
Of
of
course,
course,
HIPAA.
especially in healthcare. Yep, it's really important. But I think it could be a really great way to reach out unobtrusively to those people. So again, lots of different scenarios, right? I mean, if someone, well, if people are really sick, if they've passed away, anything like that, you have to tread lightly. That can be a way after a little period of time to indeed tread lightly. That might work better than if you picked up the phone or even sent them an email that they might not really be in the right frame of mind to click on and read and all of that. So I love that idea for that. I think you would want to have or you could have some sort of a link to a landing page or something with some more information if they if they felt like it was the right time for them to move
Mhm.
forward and find out more about that. So I think that could be a really nice
Mhm.
kind of soft way to ask that, which can, I think historically has been kind of, how do we do this? So I think
Right.
that's a great idea, Matt.
I love the soft landing. And Matt, I'm gonna give you one from even a long time ago, meaning like 10 or 5 or 10 years, I can't remember. But I went to a car dealership of all places, and I was looking at a vehicle, and I received a text from the person that I connected with there. And it said, "Hey Lynn, I don't want to bother you. Are you interested in purchasing a car in the next month, in the next 3 to 6 months, or more than 6 months? I'd like to connect with you at the right time." And I just
Mhm.
thought, wow, of car dealerships, first of all, hugely considerate,
Yeah,
right? Like, and he had my loyalty from there because he
yep,
respected my communication style and my communication timeline. He was worried about my timeline, not I've got to make quota. And so, Matt, maybe one of the texts that you send is, I'd love to reach out to you. When might be a good time for your family, and give them some options.
perfect.
And I love the idea of saying for your family, because remember, women make 76% of the giving decisions in this country, in the United States, either jointly or alone. And if you're talking to one person in the family, you kind of want to include the whole family, because you
Mhm.
never know who's making the giving decision there. And you also never know who was closest to the patient or what the scenario. But imagine if we sent out a text and said, when's a good time for you to learn? And even an option could be, not right now, but I'd like a link to know more. And they could
Mm,
do that. Or one of the options could be, I'm good. You know what I mean? Please don't contact me anymore. And so that way you're having a softer landing. I love what James said about a soft landing there. And you're also not asking them for anything but what's good for them rather than what's
mhm.
good for you.
Yep, yep, very well said. I love that.
Yeah, I think one of the big mistakes I see gift officers and frontline fundraisers make is they say, "Hey, James, I'm going to be in Memphis this week, and I have Wednesday at 9 a.m., Tuesday at noon, and Friday at 3 p.m. available. Which one would you like?" And I'm like, no, 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 no. If James is the important one, you say, "James, I'm in town this week. What's good for you?"
Hmm. Yep, yep.
And you'll laugh, because one of the pieces of technology that I bristle against is Calendly. Everybody is adopting Calendly, and I hate it.
Me too.
I
Me
hate it
too. Uh,
because, and I refuse to use it in my business for my clients, because I have Shannon, who's a wonderful woman, and she will reach out and find a time that's great for you that will work in my calendar, rather than saying, these are the only times I'm available. You book it yourself. Like, that might be convenient for doctors and nail appointments and things like that. But when I'm taking care of people, I don't want them to have to do the labor.
did we just become best friends?
I,
I could not
James, I will
agree
never
more.
send you my Calendly. I don't have one.
I don't have one either. I refuse. I've
I
been told multiple times it would be easier if you, from coworkers usually, if you
right?
would just, no, no thanks.
No
I don't
thanks.
want, like you said, I don't want the burden to be on them. They are doing me a favor by talking with me. So I would
Yes.
like to make that entire process as easy as possible for them.
And
Yes.
pleasant, and I want them to talk to a human. And so for me,
Yeah.
that's one place where tech is a little. And also, as you know, some Mondays are different than others. And
Sure.
every Monday at 2 p.m., that little square isn't the same. If
Yep.
I'm coming off a difficult client call, or I'm coming off a
Yep.
live, I'm in a different place every week. And so
Yep.
I want to give them the courtesy of having the best available me, not just that here's my blocks and there you go. So it's really funny. We should start an anti-Calendly club, James, just for those folks who. And somebody was like, "Well, that's pretty old school." And I was like, "I don't know that it's old school. It's a personal preference that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't want my calendar to be a box of choices."
No, I think you make a really good point that just because there's a space open on the calendar doesn't mean that I'm going to be in the right mindset for that. I know that, like this coming weekend, we don't have a whole lot scheduled, but the following weekend we do. We're going to drive up to Washington, D.C. and hang out and do some
Right.
other stuff. And so I haven't scheduled much on that Monday, which means I have a lot of time open right now. So
Right.
Calendly would look at that and say, oh, look at all this. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be, trying to get back in the right frame of mind and all of that stuff. So, and I know that, but there's no way for Calendly to know that. So,
No.
yeah, I could not agree with you more. I
Yay.
absolutely with you 100%.
Calendly besties. I'm gonna get us t-shirts that say
Let's do it.
my block of time is not it, Calendly. But I love the idea, Matt, that you're taking a new channel and incorporating a soft way to think about the people.
Yes.
Because we are in a people-centered business. As much as I love tech, as much as we need to build in modernity, we also need to remember that people are at the center. So James, we've got about 5 minutes. If you had a crystal ball, what are the things that you're excited for in the next year or two when it comes to fundraising and Bloomerang, and just what are you guys thinking about?
Well, so we have purchased and announced a volunteer management system, and I'm really excited to see uh, a little bit of a development of the understanding that organizations have already in place a pipeline for donors in their existing volunteers. We have so many volunteer driven organizations that come to us and say, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to get our first donor management system. We don't have a lot of donors. So we don't really know where they're going to come from, but we've got enough that we feel like we really need some help managing them. And in further conversations with them, we find out that they have a lot of volunteers, but no, we've never really thought of asking them to donate. And then we tell them, just so you know, that volunteers who donate statistically donate 10 times more than people who don't volunteer. So I realize there's kind of the whole, I don't know if I want to ask them, I don't want to be too intrusive. The fact of the matter is they're already volunteering. Time is money, right? So they're volunteering their time. They're already volunteering and giving you the equivalent of money. So they love you.
They love you so much.
So much.
I'd rather give you money more than my time.
Me too. My family volunteers at Meals on Wheels, at a cat adoption center, at a farm in the area. I mean, we volunteer at a lot of different places, and we donate at some of them, but not all of them because we haven't been asked.
Asked.
And so if you can run those reports to show which of your volunteers hasn't donated, do it. And then set up some meetings, set up some phone calls, however they want to meet, send them some text messages. Let's do it. And find out what the best path forward is there. I'm genuinely excited because I feel like as we've seen the donor pool shrink, I think that there's a whole other pool just right off camera a little bit that we can start pulling in and really replenishing that donor pool quite a bit. And I think it's going to come from volunteers. So I'm really excited to see how all of that plays out and what part, honestly, Bloomerang can play in raising awareness and making that whole process easier for folks.
Yeah, I think it's such a brilliant partnership and move. Is volunteers are giving you the most precious thing. And I also think, we often talk about how to make our language more inclusive. And so I'm going to leave everyone with this. Please replace generosity with philanthropy. I mean, replace philanthropy with generosity.
There you go.
Everyone can be generous, but not everybody sees themselves as a philanthropist. And so your volunteers are being generous. They are not yet, until you ask them, being philanthropic, and they may never see themselves as philanthropists. So the more inclusive we can make our language. Oh, James, you're so generous with your time. You're so generous. Your whole family comes and supports us. That is meaningful. It has nothing to do with money directly to the bottom line of the nonprofit. And so how we can call people in and make sure, I think part of the reason people aren't giving is they don't feel that they belong. They don't feel their donations can make a difference. They don't see people like themselves giving. They just see a certain type of people. And so can we call them in with a call to generosity rather than a call to philanthropy? And can we make that part of our organizational ethos and our mindset that we take all kinds, anyone who's generous, come on, and we'll love on you and we'll treat you well, and we're going to treat you with respect. So I love that. And I really appreciate you,
Absolutely.
James, for your time today in between conferences, doing the travel life. And also, Bloomerang has been nothing. I mean, ever since I met Jay Love years ago when we were both children, as I might add, Bloomerang has done nothing but be good for the industry, give back to the industry, and now sponsoring the podcast, Fundraising is Funny, is so generous. So we're so grateful for you. Thank you for your time, James.
Oh, it's been a thrill to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.